Darkness slowly swallowed the Arizona sky as the sun set behind the distant mountains, leaving behind a streak of fiery red, like the ashes of a battle that had just ended. Liam Carter walked slowly down the empty street, each heavy footstep echoing in the eerie silence of the night. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that something was pulling him forward, an inexplicable feeling guiding him to this place. And then he saw it. A dark figure lay quietly in the corner of an old iron cage. The dim yellow light cast shadows over its dust-covered gray-black fur, its lifeless eyes staring blankly into the void. Liam's heart clenched. No way, it couldn't be. But if it was really him, then why were his eyes so empty? Why was there no sign of recognition? What had happened? What was waiting for him ahead? Don't take your eyes off this mysterious story. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next twists. Explosion. Liam Carter, a 35-year-old veteran, walked slowly down the empty street, his worn combat boots striking the pavement in a solemn rhythm, a heavy echo of the past. 2 years had passed since he left the military, but the war still clung to him, not in the scars on his skin, but in the invisible wounds buried deep within his soul. He had tried everything to fill the emptiness: work, therapy, even fleeting conversations with strangers. But nothing could bring back the sense of wholeness he had lost on the battlefield. And that was why he was here, at an animal rescue shelter. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, wasn't sure what he hoped to find. Just a vague instinct had led him to this place. His footsteps halted when a shelter worker, a woman with kind eyes but a thoughtful gaze, gestured for him to follow. They turned into a quieter section of the shelter, away from the barking dogs. And then he saw it. Inside a small kennel, a large German shepherd lay quietly in the shadows, its back turned to him. Liam's heart pounded. There was no mistaking it. Maximum, his old partner, the one who had stood by his side through fire and chaos, the dog that had saved his life more than once, a true warrior, strong and fearless. But something was wrong. Max lifted his head at the sound of his name, but there was no spark of recognition, no wagging tail, no excited leap, no flicker of familiarity in his eyes. He looked at Liam as if he were a stranger, as if everything they had been through had never happened. A tightness gripped Liam's chest, a deep and aching sense of loss washing over him. What had happened to Max? Could he bring him back from the darkness of forgotten memories, or had their past been lost forever? Let's follow this heartfelt journey together. And don't forget to hit subscribe now so you won't miss this powerful story of friendship, loyalty, and the path to finding oneself. Liam Carter, 35 years old, had been out of the military for 2 years, yet the battlefield still clung to him. It wasn't the physical wounds that weighed him down, but the invisible scars, ones no one could see, but that haunted him every night. Restless sleep, echoes of gunfire, distant screams, and faces he could never forget. All of it had turned his post-war life into an endless cycle of loneliness and despair. Emily, his older sister, couldn't bear to watch him spiral deeper into his trauma. She urged him to visit an animal rescue shelter, hoping that a four-legged companion might help him reconnect with the world. At first, Liam resisted. How could a dog possibly fill the massive void inside him? But something, some buried instinct, nudged him to give it a chance. And now, here he was, standing in front of the shelter's rusted gate, unaware that fate was about to reunite him with a past he thought was lost forever. Inside, the air was filled with the sounds of barking, echoes of lives waiting for a home. Liam walked slowly past rows of kennels, dozens of hopeful eyes watching him, Some dogs jumped excitedly, eager for attention, while others remained curled up in silence, their eyes resigned to an uncertain fate. He was about to turn away when a shelter worker, a woman with sharp eyes and a high ponytail, stepped up beside him. "There's someone I think you should meet," she said, her voice carrying an unmistakable weight. Liam frowned. "Who?" "A German shepherd. But he's not like the others." Something about the way she said it sent a ripple through Liam's chest. Under the burning hues of the sunset, he followed her to a secluded section in the back of the shelter. And there, behind cold steel bars, lay a familiar silhouette, silent, unmoving, as if it had given up on the world. Liam froze. His throat went dry, his heartbeat pounding against his ribs. In the dim light of the setting sun, stretched out in the corner of a worn-down kennel, lay a large German shepherd. His coat, once black and tan, had dulled with time, his frame weary and still, like a shadow of what he used to be. It had been so long, but Liam knew. There was no mistaking him. Maximum, the loyal companion who had once fought by his side. The dog who had saved his life on the most dangerous missions. Fate had brought them back together. But something was wrong. Something was wrong. Liam swallowed hard and took a hesitant step forward, his voice unsteady. "Max, is that you?" The dog slowly lifted his head. His deep brown eyes flickered over Liam. But there was nothing there. No joy, no wagging tail, just an empty, hollow gaze. As if Liam was a stranger. The silence wrapped around him like a vice, freezing him in place. A sharp ache spread through his chest. This wasn't the Max he remembered, the fearless dog who had thrown himself into danger to protect him, the loyal companion who would leap with excitement every time they reunited. And yet, now, he didn't recognize him. Liam took a slow, shaky breath, his fists clenching. "What's wrong, Max?" "It's me. I'm right here." But the dog didn't move. His eyes remained distant, as if his past had been wiped away, as if the name meant nothing to him anymore. A quiet voice behind Liam broke through the weight of the moment. "He's been through a lot." Liam turned. The shelter worker stood there, hesitation flickering in her eyes. "We found him at a small rescue in another state. It looks like his previous owner gave up on him. Max has severe anxiety and struggles to trust people. He barely reacts to anyone anymore." Liam stood frozen, his gaze drifting back to Max. Abandoned? Number that couldn't be. There was no way a warrior like Max had been tossed aside like something disposable. But as Liam looked into his eyes now, he understood. Max wasn't the same dog he once was. He had been through things even Liam couldn't imagine. He had lost his trust in people. Liam's grip tightened around the leash, his eyes never leaving Max. The German shepherd who had once been his comrade, the only friend he had trusted on the battlefield, now felt like nothing more than a ghost of the past. But no matter how distant Max seemed, Liam couldn't turn his back on him. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "I'm taking him home." The shelter worker hesitated. "Are you sure? He's not easy to care for. Most people give up after a week." Liam didn't need to think twice. "I'm not most people." Max didn't react. No wagging tail, no bark, no flicker of recognition. But Liam didn't care. He would fight for him, just like Max had once fought for him. The drive home was heavy with silence. Liam had placed a soft blanket on the back seat, but Max didn't seem to notice. He curled into the corner, his gaze fixed on the passing world outside the window. Not once did he look back at Liam. The sting of that distance settled deep in Liam's chest. They had once been inseparable. Max had been willing to charge into danger to protect him, and now he wouldn't even acknowledge him. Was he afraid of Liam? Or had he truly forgotten him? Liam wasn't sure which thought hurt more. He glanced at the rearview mirror. "Still as stubborn as ever, huh?" he muttered, trying to keep his voice light. No reaction. Outside, the darkness slowly swallowed the road ahead. But inside Liam, a quiet fire still burned. He wasn't giving up. When they finally pulled up in front of a small house on the outskirts of town, Liam stepped out and opened the back door. Max didn't move. He didn't leap out, didn't sniff the air, didn't show the slightest interest in his new surroundings. Liam exhaled, crouching beside the open door. He gave the seat a gentle pat. "Come on, Max. This is your new home." The dog slowly lifted his head, his expression unreadable. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he carefully stepped out, placing each paw on the ground as if unsure of where he stood. Liam's house wasn't big, but it had a spacious yard where the evening breeze carried away the dust of the road. It was peaceful, nothing like what they had known on the battlefield. But Max wasn't at ease. He stood there, ears slightly drooped, eyes scanning his surroundings as if searching for an invisible threat. Liam watched him quietly, understanding the caution in every movement. He didn't push him. He stepped inside first, leaving the door open, then turned back. "Come on, Max." The dog remained at the threshold. He inhaled deeply, his paws shifting slightly backward, as if caught between the instinct to run and the hesitation to move forward. The moment stretched endlessly. Liam held his breath, unsure what Max would choose. Then, one step, another. And finally Max slowly crossed the threshold. Liam exhaled, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. It was a small step, but to him, it meant everything. Max had entered the house. Now it was Liam's turn to help him find his way back home. Liam wanted to believe that Max would quickly settle in, that he would somehow feel this place was safe. But reality wasn't that simple. The moment he stepped inside, Max hesitated. He stood frozen just past the doorway, uncertain if he truly belonged here. His nose twitched as he sniffed the air, taking in the unfamiliar scents, but he didn't move any farther. His eyes remained distant, still filled with doubt. Liam didn't push. He knew patience was key. He had spent the afternoon setting up a corner in the living room just for Max. A soft bed, a fresh bowl of water, food, and a few toys. When he patted the bed, hoping to coax Max over, the dog remained still, ears flicking back slightly. No excitement, no sign of comfort. Liam sighed. He knew Max needed time, but it was hard seeing his old friend like this. Cold, distant, as if they had never known each other. That first night passed in silence. Liam left his bedroom door open, not just so Max would know he was welcome to come closer if he wanted, but also because he didn't want to feel alone in the quiet house. Sometime in the night, a faint sound stirred him awake. In the dim glow of the moonlight, he saw Max lying just outside the bedroom door. Not inside, but not completely turned away either. Liam remained still, suppressing the small smile tugging at his lips. It was a sign. Not a big one. Not obvious. But it meant something. Max was still afraid, still keeping his distance. But instead of retreating to some far-off corner, he had chosen to stay close. Even if it was just at the threshold. At least he hadn't left. Over the next few days, Liam tried, little by little, to rebuild the connection between them. He tossed a ball across the yard. Max followed it with his eyes but didn't move. He crouched down and reached out to pat his head. Max tensed, stepping back just slightly. But the hardest part, the part that stung the most, was mealtime. Max wouldn't eat if Liam was in the room. Liam placed the bowl of food down, waiting. But Max only stood there, watching him as if expecting him to leave. So Liam did. He stepped out of the living room, peeking from the hallway. Only then did Max cautiously approach, eating in slow, hesitant bites, as if he was afraid of something. The sight twisted something deep in Liam's chest. What had he been through to become like this? Liam took a slow, steady breath, pushing down the ache that threatened to rise. Max had saved him so many times on the battlefield. Now it was his turn to save Max, not from bullets or explosions, but from the unseen wounds that had been eating away at his soul. And no matter how long it took, Liam wasn't going to give up. He just had to find a way in, something that could break through the walls Max had built around himself, something that could reach into his memories and pull him back from the darkness he had been lost in for far too long. One late afternoon, as the fading sunlight stretched across the backyard, Liam opened an old wooden cabinet in his bedroom. Inside, among objects worn by time, he found something special, a relic of the past, his old military jacket. The same jacket he had worn on countless missions, the one soaked in sweat, dirt, moments of life and death, and memories of Max he could never forget. Gently, he pulled it out, running his hand over the frayed fabric, sending a thin layer of dust into the golden light. Then he stepped outside, where Max lay silently, gazing into the distant horizon. "Look what I've got, Max." Liam crouched down, carefully placing the jacket in front of Max before stepping back, giving him space. The German Shepherd stirred slightly. He didn't rush toward it like he once would have, back when every homecoming meant Max leaping onto him, burying his nose into the scent of the worn fabric, tail wagging with joy. Now, Max just lay there, his eyes resting on the jacket. But then, slowly, he lifted his nose and took in the familiar scent. Liam held his breath. "Do you remember, Max?" "1 second. 2?" Max nudged the jacket with his nose. A sharp pang of hope clenched Liam's heart. But before he could say anything, Max suddenly stepped back and turned away. Liam froze. Why? Hadn't he remembered? Hadn't something stirred within him for that brief, fragile moment? Then, it hit him. Memories weren't just joy. They were pain, too. Maybe, to Max, this jacket wasn't just a reminder of the good days by Liam's side. Maybe it brought back the battles, the wounds, the fear he had fought so hard to bury. Liam swallowed his disappointment. "That's okay. You're not ready. I'll wait." But then, Liam decided to try one more thing. Something Max could never forget, no matter how much he tried to shut out the past. Reaching into his pocket, Liam pulled out an old military whistle. This whistle wasn't just a training tool. It was a sound tied to commands, to safety, to trust. Liam lifted it to his lips. 2 short blows, precise, just like in the old days, the same signal that had always called Max back to him. Max flinched. His ears shot up instantly. His entire body tensed. The instincts of a soldier were still there. He turned his head, looking straight at Liam, and for the first time in those deep brown eyes, there was something familiar. Liam barely dared to breathe. Max remembered. Even if only for a fleeting second, he remembered. But then, just as quickly, Max turned away again. He didn't come forward. He still kept his distance. Liam clenched the whistle in his palm, but he wasn't disappointed. Not this time. Because he had seen it. A flicker of light breaking through the fog of forgotten memories. And he knew that if he kept trying, that light would only grow brighter. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, painting the sky in soft amber hues, Liam decided to try something different. He needed a way to break through the invisible wall Max had built between them. Grabbing a leash, he walked over to where Max lay in the grass, silent and still. "How about a walk, Max?" The German Shepherd glanced at him, his gaze quiet but absent of resistance. Liam took that as a good sign. Gently, he clipped the leash onto Max's collar and led him outside. Each of Max's steps was cautious, hesitant, as if he wasn't entirely convinced the world was safe yet. But at least, he was walking beside Liam. Along the narrow dirt path winding around the property, a soft breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and the quiet hum of nature. Liam didn't say much. He just walked, slowly, steadily, giving Max the space to feel, to breathe, to take it all in at his own pace. Then, unexpectedly, Liam felt a faint movement beside him. Max tilted his head ever so slightly, sniffing at Liam's hand as it hung by his side. Liam froze. This was the first time Max had willingly reached out to him. A small gesture, yet it meant everything. He didn't move, didn't rush to pet him. He simply let his hand remain still, letting Max decide the pace. The dog sniffed again, a light, hesitant breath, then slowly turned away as if that tiny act had taken all the courage he had. But Liam wasn't disappointed. If anything, warmth spread through his chest, a quiet, growing sense of hope. That night, Liam dug through an old wooden box he had kept for years. Inside, buried among faded military keepsakes, he found something far more important. An old rubber ball, worn from time and use. He turned it over in his hands, his fingers tracing the tiny bite marks scattered across its surface. Max had once loved this ball more than anything. Whether in the tense stretches between missions or during the rare moments of rest, Max had always found a way to bring it to Liam, his silent invitation to steal a moment of peace amid the chaos. Now, standing in the moonlit yard, Liam approached Max, who lay quietly in the grass, his amber eyes reflecting the soft glow of the night. Liam crouched down and gently placed the ball in front of him. "Do you remember this?" Max lifted his head, his gaze settling on the ball. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Hesitation, recognition, maybe even something deeper. Liam didn't push. He said nothing more. He just waited. Slowly, Max lowered his head, inching closer. His nose brushed against the old toy, inhaling deeply as if searching for something long buried. Then, he froze. 1 second. 2. Liam held his breath. Did he remember? Then, in a fragile moment, Max lifted his front paw and gently touched the ball. Not with excitement, not with the same playful energy as before, but he touched it. Liam swallowed hard, emotion swelling in his chest. This was progress. He crouched down, carefully picking up the ball, then rolled it back toward Max. The German Shepherd watched it move, his ears twitching slightly, but he didn't chase after it. He just stared, as if wrestling with something deep inside himself. Liam knew he wasn't just looking at the ball. He was staring into old memories, into feelings buried beneath the ashes of time. A soft smile touched Liam's lips as he murmured, his voice a quiet promise. "It's okay, Max. We've got time. I'll be right here waiting for you to remember." No matter how long it took, he wasn't giving up. The night deepened. A cool breeze drifted through the cracked open window, carrying the quiet chill of a peaceful evening. Liam sat on the porch steps, watching Max from a distance. The dog lay stretched out on the grass, gazing at nothing in particular. 2 weeks had passed since Liam brought him home. Yet the distance between them still lingered, an invisible but heavy space that neither of them could cross just yet. There had been small moments of connection, brief glimpses of the dog Max used to be, but Liam knew his battle-worn friend wasn't ready to fully let go of whatever was holding him back. Taking a deep breath, Liam decided to try something. "Max, sit." The command came naturally, just as it always had, back in the days when they were an unstoppable team. Max's head lifted slightly. A flicker of hesitation crossed his eyes. He looked at Liam, really looked at him, like something in his mind was stirring, something familiar but just out of reach. Then, slowly, Max lowered his body, planted his front paws firmly, and sat. Liam froze. He could hardly believe it. Not because sit was a difficult command, but because Max had remembered. Somewhere deep in his mind, beneath the tangled mess of memories and invisible wounds, Max still remembered the life they once had. Liam swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check. Slowly, carefully, he knelt in front of Max, not wanting to startle him. "Good boy, Max. You still remember." Then, he did something he hadn't dared to do before. He reached out. Not a sudden movement, not rushed, just an open hand, waiting in quiet patience. Max stiffened slightly, but this time, he didn't pull away. Liam held his breath, waiting. Then, ever so slowly, Max tilted his head forward, allowing Liam's hand to rest atop his head. For the first time since they had been reunited, Max let Liam touch him. Liam felt the warmth beneath the coarse fur, the familiar presence of the dog he had once trusted with his life. This wasn't the broken, distant stranger he had brought home from the shelter. This was Max, his friend, his partner, the one who had run into danger to protect him. A simple touch, but it carried the weight of everything, of their past, of their unspoken promises, of a bond that had never truly been broken. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. As always, he left his bedroom door open, a habit he had formed from the first night Max arrived. Through the dim glow of the bedside lamp, he could see Max lying in his usual spot near the doorway, still keeping his distance. But then, just as Liam was drifting into sleep, a soft sound stirred the quiet. Footsteps. Liam opened his eyes, but he didn't turn his head. He just waited. The footsteps moved closer, slow, hesitant, and then closer still. Max was moving, not away, not toward the door, but toward him. A few seconds later, Liam felt warmth near the edge of the bed. He didn't turn, didn't want to startle Max, but in the quiet darkness he could feel his presence, closer than ever before. Max didn't climb onto the bed. He didn't touch Liam, but he had chosen to stay near. And for Liam, that was everything. A sign that Max was slowly coming back. A sign that their bond, though fractured, could still be mended. And most importantly, they still had each other. The sun had long since dipped behind the mountains, leaving the sky washed in deep indigo. In the fading twilight, Liam stood in the open backyard, his eyes on Max. The German shepherd still kept his distance, watching Liam with a familiar wariness. Even after weeks together, Max wasn't fully comfortable with closeness. Liam had come to accept that. He knew that unseen wounds took time to heal. But tonight, he wanted to try something, a test, to see if there was still something left inside Max, some piece of their old connection buried beneath the weight of time and trauma. He took a slow, steady breath, then spoke. Firm, strong, but never forceful. "Max, sit." The command rippled through the air, stirring something unseen. Liam didn't expect much. He had tried before, and every time Max had only stood there staring at him with empty eyes as if the words meant nothing. But this time, something was different. Max blinked. His ears twitched slightly. Something flickered in his still, tense body, an old memory, creeping in like a distant echo. And then, slowly, he lowered himself to the ground. He sat. Liam froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. For a moment, the world around him faded, everything else dissolving into the background. It was just him and Max, and this fragile, fleeting moment where past and present collided. He took a careful step forward, lowering himself to one knee in front of Max. He didn't want to startle him, didn't want to break the delicate thread binding them together in this instant. "Good boy, Max." His voice wavered, not out of fear, but because of the overwhelming emotions swelling in his chest. Then Liam tried something else. He reached out. Not hurried, not demanding, just an open hand, quietly waiting. Max flinched slightly. His eyes flickered to Liam's hand, then away, as if he was fighting an internal battle. Liam didn't move, didn't pull back. And then, hesitantly, carefully, Max tilted his head forward, allowing Liam's fingers to brush against the dark fur on his head. The first touch after all these years. Liam felt the warmth beneath his palm, something real and alive, more than any memory could ever be. Max was no longer the distant, broken dog from the rescue shelter. He was Max, his friend. That night, Liam left his bedroom door open as always, but this time he expected nothing. He had learned that his bond with Max couldn't be forced. He lay back, closed his eyes, and let the darkness settle over the room. Then, in the quiet stillness, a faint sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Liam opened his eyes but didn't move. He wanted to see what would happen next. The footsteps came closer, slow, deliberate but certain. And then, in the dim glow of the night, Liam realized something. Max was no longer curled up in the corner of the room, no longer lying by the door. He was right beside the bed, not touching him, not seeking comfort, just choosing to be near. And to Liam, that meant more than anything. Max wasn't fully the dog he used to be, but he was finding his way back. And Liam knew that one day the distance between them would disappear completely. The sky was clear, the golden sunlight filtering through rustling tree branches as a soft breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. Liam adjusted the leash clipped to Max's collar, gazing into his deep brown eyes, wondering if this trip would mean anything at all. He had thought about this day many times, the day he would bring Max back to a place that had once been their sanctuary. A peaceful park where they had spent rare, quiet moments in between the chaos of their missions. "You remember this place, don't you, Max?" Liam murmured, his fingers tightening slightly on the leash. Max didn't respond. He rarely reacted when Liam spoke, but there was something different in his eyes today. Less fear, less hesitation. The car rolled to a stop on the dirt path leading into the park. When Liam opened the door, he waited. Max lifted his head, sniffing the air. His ears twitched. He was remembering something. Liam didn't rush him. He simply unclipped the leash and stepped out first. For a few seconds, Max hesitated. Then, slowly, cautiously, he jumped down. The park was just as it had always been. Towering trees bathed in sunlight. A narrow gravel path winding toward an open clearing. The very place where Liam and Max had once trained, played, and sometimes just sat together in quiet companionship. Liam didn't call Max, didn't give a command. He just stood still. He wanted to see if Max could feel something on his own, if this place still meant anything to him. At first, Max kept his usual distance. He followed Liam, but carefully, never letting him out of sight. His eyes still held a trace of hesitation. But then, a breeze swept through the clearing carrying a scent from long ago, and everything changed. Max froze. His head tilted slightly, his nose twitched. Then, he moved, faster. Liam's eyes widened as Max suddenly picked up his pace. Then, without warning, he ran. Not out of fear, not to escape, but like he used to, like a dog set free, like a warrior who had found himself again. Max tore across the field, tail wagging high, his breaths quick but exhilarated. Liam almost couldn't believe it. For the first time in years, Max looked alive. There was no tension in his steps, no wary glances over his shoulder, no invisible weight pressing down on him. Max was playing. A quiet laugh rumbled from Liam's chest. He bent down, grabbed a nearby stick, and tossed it into the distance. Max stopped. Liam held his breath. This moment would decide everything. Then, as if something long buried had awakened, Max bolted. He sprinted toward the stick, muscles strong, movements effortless just like before. And when he turned back, stick clamped in his jaws. His eyes were no longer distant. Liam dropped to his knees, arms wide open. "Good boy, Max." And for the first time since they had been reunited, Max ran straight to him. No hesitation, no fear, just Max, his dog, his friend, his partner who had saved his life more times than he could count. A new bond, different from before, but no less meaningful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Liam sat on an old wooden bench, Max lying beside him, his head resting lightly on Liam's leg, just like he used to. Liam ran his fingers through the thick fur, feeling the steady rhythm of Max's breathing. They had both changed. They were no longer the young, invincible warriors they once were. But that didn't mean they couldn't rebuild. They weren't the same. But they still had each other, and that was enough. They would keep going. The sky glowed in soft shades of amber as the last rays of sunlight stretched across the open field, casting golden flecks over the winding gravel paths of the park. Liam sat quietly on the old wooden bench, his gaze drifting to Max, curled up beside him. The German shepherd's breath was steady, rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of the evening breeze. No more tension, no more distance. It hadn't been an easy road to this moment. At first, Max had only known how to retreat, to pull away, to look at Liam as if he were a stranger. But now, here he was, lying by his side, like this was home. Liam reached out slowly, with no fear of Max flinching away. His fingers brushed through the thick fur, feeling a warmth he had once thought was lost forever. Max didn't stiffen. He sighed, then gently rested his head on Liam's leg, a gesture from long ago, from another life, when they had been soldiers together. It wasn't obedience, it wasn't instinct, it was trust. Liam looked down at Max, memories flooding back, of the nights they had spent on the battlefield, when Max had been the only thing keeping him grounded, the only thing keeping the darkness of despair at bay. And now, their roles had reversed. Max was the one who needed him, needed patience, gentleness, someone willing to stay, to prove that there was still good left in the world. They had both been broken, both had been lost, trying to find their way back to themselves. But after everything, they had found each other again. Liam took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp evening air. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. Not the forced, hollow kind of peace he had pretended to have for the past 2 years, but something real. Because now, he knew, no matter how painful their past had been, no matter how deep their scars ran, they could still move forward. The sunset faded into deep purples, and darkness began to settle over the park. Max stirred, then lifted his head to look at Liam, and in his eyes there was no fear, no hesitation, only trust. Liam smiled, reaching down to give him a gentle pat. "Ready to go home, buddy?" Max's tail wagged, just slightly. Liam let out a quiet laugh, then stood up, patting his thigh. Max rose to his feet, walking beside him without a leash, without resistance. No more distance, no more doubt. They weren't the same as they once were, but that didn't mean they couldn't begin again. Together, they would face whatever came next. Perhaps we've all had moments like Liam and Max. Days of feeling lost, invisible wounds no one else can see, scars that may have healed on the surface but remain etched deep within our souls. But this story isn't just about a veteran and his war dog. It's a story about patience, about trust, and about the incredible power of love. It reminds us that even when we lose parts of ourselves, we can still find our way back. That even the deepest wounds can heal. With time, with persistence, with kindness. And most importantly, none of us have to go through it alone. If you believe in the magic of patience and love, if this story touched your heart, hit subscribe today. Liam and Max's journey isn't over. Just like all of us, they still have new chapters to write. Let's build a community of people who believe in hope, in second chances, in the strength to keep going no matter how hard life gets. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next inspiring story. Because sometimes, just one story can change a life.